Oh, what's the whole thing?
Man, you're just... I don't know if you're a good friend here. You don't watch the fucking show. Welcome to another episode of Nerd Out.
Welcome to another episode of Nerd Out. Is that right?
Yeah, you're actually more awkward than me. That's good. I'm Randy, and this is Ryan, and we've been friends for an incredibly long time, and just wanted to sort of breach. We went to high school, middle school, all that stuff together, and we were two awkward dudes and that were actually, like, as teenagers, transitioning from, like, collectors, transitioning from, like being a prepubescent to being a teenager and doing the collecting. And it was an awkward transition, would you not agree? Like, and this was in the 90s.
General?
Yeah. Do you think, like, as a collector, like, going from like 12 to 13 or that like 12 and 15 category age, like, I mean, the awkwardness of that at that time in the 90s.
Well,
like,
when you don't play sports, you know, what else are you gonna? Your entry. Well, that was the early, era of, like, the modern day nerd culture, I guess. All the Generation X people who grew up with Star Wars, being like, oh, I could get in. There's now more of this kind of content happening, and so I remember phasing out from toys as a kid when it was just generally accepted you're gonna play with toys. Like, I remember, like, the slow trickle of, like, oh, what, you're bringing a G.I. Joe to school? Like, what? You know what I mean? You're like, oh shit, I'm across the line now. And then was a couple years, and then all of a sudden it became kind of cool, at least amongst, like you said, the awkward transitionals, to collect toys.
Was for us in the 90s, this was the 90s, was it X-Men and Star Trek Next Generation that sort of, would you say, sort of made the nerd culture a little bit more mainstream for us, at least at the time?
Yeah, I think so. You mean the shows? Or
yeah,
the toys?
Like, Star Trek Next Generation seemed to have a cross appeal. Yeah. And then for us, I think, like, the whole X-Men comic books, the Image comics, that seemed to be the more, like, socially acceptable, like, thing. Like, it crossed out of just being from the comic book shop.
Totally. I mean, the death of Superman was huge, and comic books with their thousands of variant covers.
Yes.
The really
investors
conscious effort to make collector's items, like, bagged issues and all the other stuff. And we worked at a comic book store at that time. And so, so that also probably is, like, another thing, is that just being in the comic book world, like, right in the what do you call it, the
eye of the storm.
The eye of the storm.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure, we did work at a comic book store, and that gave us a little bit that either legitimized our nerdiness, or made us even more nerdy than
well, I don't think it affected I think we were socially adept enough that it didn't, certainly I never felt stigmatized.
No, that's true, I guess.
Although, you know what,
when we got to high school, though, we became a little bit more involved, because when you get to high school, and again, this is more post that, but when you start getting to high school, the need to be involved in sports and all that stuff starts to dissipate a little bit. People start to find out what their clique is, and then I think you become comfortable with that clique, and then therefore other people start feeling comfortable with that, perhaps. Did you not sense that?
People start becoming comfortable with their clique, and then other people are comfortable with that, meaning...
Maybe not. Like, I'm saying that it becomes more acceptable to others when you become accepting of it. But well, that's probably not true.
To be clear, it wasn't like what we showcased in our high school clique was our passion for X-Men and Star Trek. I think it was more like wearing band shirts.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And then collecting toys and being into comic books was sort of
was
like
still in the dark.
Was closed behind closed doors.
I remember I did wear the Crow shirt, and that was my sort of, like, hey,
coming out.
Yeah, that was
which, by the way, wasn't a huge risk.
No,
because
it
the
wasn't.
Crow is sort of like gothic imagery.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's not like now. This is what I keep saying, like, which is such the worst, saddest version of, like, our grandparents saying in my day. But in our day at the comic book store, like, the idea of this mainstream boom of not just superhero movies, comic book movies, but also, like, 9,000 Star Wars things and Star Trek things, and it was just like to think about the reality now.
Oh,
25 years ago, it was.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, like I remember in the summer of '89, or whatever, right before that, right before Batman the movie came out. I remember it was the end of the school year. I'm gonna say 7th grade or so, and I wore a Batman shirt. Like it was starting. I remember, J.C. Penney's. Everyone was starting to carry it, but people who were not in the know didn't really anticipate Batman or whatnot. And I remember wearing a Batman shirt to school, and I remember Travis, the quarterback of the football team. Yeah, I just didn't want to give his full name. But let's just do it.
Beep it.
Yeah. But I remember him busting my balls. And he was like, "You're wearing a Batman shirt?" And I swear to God, a couple weeks later, I remember seeing him wear a Batman shirt. I swear to God. It was like, I swear to God. And then I remember just looking at him, but I would never say anything.
Do you understand that no one who didn't live through it, man, could understand the power of bat fever.
I remember
that summer, you couldn't go anywhere. And unlike today, where, like, once again, you're going to see Star Wars shit in Target and this, but also, Marvel movies. It was just Batman.
Absolutely.
100% enveloped in Batman everywhere you went. That was it.
I remember going to Cedar Point and truly counting the Batman merchandise people were wearing, and 2 out of 3 people were wearing Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that intense. And then the second closest thing to, like, a phenomenon of that sort, but not in the same realm, was Simpsons. Like, I remember, like, gravitating to the Simpsons pretty early on because, again, we were educated into that world, so we were a step ahead of the mainstream. But I remember going out to get a Simpsons shirt, and then, like, literally weeks later, everybody had a Simpsons shirt, and that was like everybody had a Simpsons Don't Have a Cowman, Cowabunga. Like there was the family picture. Like there were like 6 shirts that like they just went crazy in mass produce.
And then there was of course the bootleg shirts with Bart being on Saddam Hussein.
That's right. The bootleg shirts.
Jamaican Bart.
Yep.
Smoking a joint.
And there were a lot of that's right. Jamaican Bart. That was huge. But yeah, Batman was and maybe the Batman was one of those touchstones that like. That normalized our comic collecting, but it didn't ultimately. Like,
well, it was a huge leap forward.
Yes,
because,
it was.
The mainstream, the quarterback of the football team included, was suddenly embracing a comic book character.
And I swear to God, he wore that Batman shirt. I'm not full of shit.
I remember distinctly, like, that finding out the people who were traditionally popular kids, when I found out they had a nerdy side, it's like it's confusing. It's like you both it makes you feel better, but somehow worse, And, but another thing I remember about that era is reading, and would it a Toy Fair magazine that would cover like also movie stuff?
Oh yeah, Toy
Fair. Wizard. Yeah. So Wizard, I remember obsessing over all the latest news about what comic movies were happening. It was like the rumors of X-Men movie with Harvey Keitel as Wolverine.
I remember
Robert De Niro as Wolverine. The James Cameron Spider-Man. He's not going to have mechanical web shooters. He's going to have organic web. All this stuff, and it was just like, and then it would never happen. And it would just like trickle. We'd get Blade. This is 93, we worked at a comic book store. 5 years later, we finally got Blade.
Blade was probably the breakthrough, the first, like, since Batman, maybe the first successful, but it was at a different level.
I'm trying to think.
The Crow was successful, but that could have been.
I don't count. I mean, of course, I would. I would. Okay. Well, I'm saying, I guess if you want to count the Crow, you'd also have to count the Mask.
Yeah, that's
and you'd
true.
have to count.
Which Mask was more of a vehicle for James Cameron's success. Jim Carrey, yes.
But it's still like Dark Horse.
That's
comic
true.
book.
It really was.
I'm trying to think. Tank Girl. I mean,
Tank
I don't
Girl,
even know
same
what
thing.
else to think. But I'm talking about like the Marvel, DC comic book movies. Which are the ones that the only ones that really care.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I was like, I want to see these characters on screen. So it's Batman '89, then all the sequels, and then Marvel never had a successful movie until Blade, which is ironic for 2 reasons. One, it's Blade.
Yeah.
The most obscure.
As a comic book fan, I didn't really know who Blade was at the time. Yeah.
And also the fact, this is another thing with the success of Black Panther, like, while Black Panther is definitively like an African-American superhero story, like in every aspect of it, Blade is still an African-American superhero. And like, that was the first one.
Right.
And people don't really talk about it because I guess it was more of a vampire story.
Right,
like
right.
The fact that he was black was less important than the fact that he was half vampire, half human.
And then you had Spawn, but again, Spawn was like late 90s, right? That was after our era. Spawn for us was
I think it was 97, the movie?
Yeah, you're right. I'm going back.
But to be clear, none of these movies, with the exception of the first Blade, were good. I mean, when you think about like...
You don't think the 89 Batman was good?
No, I'm sorry, between 89 and Batman, that 10-year period, post-Batman... And I'd say that Blade heralded the beginning of the good Marvel movies with X-Men coming 2 years later. That 10-year period when they were figuring out when it was like, I don't know, the Phantom? Because logic was...
Dick Tracy wasn't in comic book, but...
close enough. I loved the Dick Tracy movie.
I do too.
But and we'll get into that when we transition to toys. But the idea of people thought, well, Batman's popular.
Yeah.
He was a 1930s superhero. Let's look at the other 1930s.
Yes.
No. The Phantom is not like Batman.
Yeah.
Like, they both came out in the same time generationally, but they're not at all the same kind of...
No.
They don't have the same cachet.
No way. So...
Toys?
Toys. So, I mean... There's movies and like that was that was a little bit, that made it more acceptable. But both you and I, we still at 14 years old would ride our bike up to toy stores and buy toys.
That was the beginning of it.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I was saying my passion for toys as a child ended. Then there was a little period of nothing.
What brought you back in?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I wonder if it was the Dick Tracy toys, because I love Dick Tracy so much.
Those toys were so goofy.
I know, but there's something about the characters and seeing the characters that I just love those faces. Like, because that's the whole appeal of Dick Tracy. The appeal of Dick Tracy is almost the same as Batman. Like, the villains. Like, how eclectic and diverse the villains were. Just see the
brow
face and the brow as those toys. They never made a little head or a little face toy.
No. Do you remember the controversy of Steve the Tramp?
Because he was homeless or something?
No, because they called him Tramp, And the package it said Steve the Tramp. And then he became one of the rare chase figures for us. So we would
Do you have him? Or did you ever get him?
Yeah, absolutely. The only figure that never made it to the American market, and I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, is the Blank. The Madonna figure.
Yeah.
I did have one later in life, but I'm not gonna lie, like I bought it to resell because it was so ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
I did like it, but it was particularly bought to resell, so it wasn't bought because I finally acquired the Blank.
And chase figures were... Are you just saying that we literally had to chase after them?
Yes.
Because that was another appeal to getting into toy collecting for me, I think, at that age, is that concept of, like, we're going to go to the Target or wherever. I don't know if Target was selling toys back then, but the Toys R Us in this part of town. Then there's Toys R Us, and, like, and when you're younger, it's like, to go to another part of town...
To find an Iceman.
Get a passport. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, seriously, like, oh my God, where am I?
We would go to...
It's worth it for the hunt,
and
the thrill.
I don't know if you ever went with me, but we would go to Canada, too. Did you ever...
I don't think I
that
ever
was
did
maybe
that.
Dave, but like...
I want to literally go to another country.
Yeah. So you think that Dick... I remember when my memory of you starting to collect was with the Toy Biz Marvel figures, like the Iron Man.
Is it safe to say this?
Yes, that's X-Men, but like this stuff, this packaging.
Oh, yes.
I remember finding that. Yeah, and that always... I always think of you when I think of the Iron Man. And at the time, that was like... I guess it was... They're pretty awful, but they're sort of awfully great.
Well... Yeah, because, like I said, it was all about... all that mattered. I'm looking around the room and all these beautiful, Bandai, perfect skull. That's great, but all that mattered at the time was that these characters were represented in plastic.
Yes.
That's it. They could have looked horrible. They did look horrible.
They did.
But I was just like, oh my God, it's an Iron... I guess Iron Man had Secret Wars.
Iron Man, had Secret Wars.
Which are still, like, beautiful figures.
Yes.
But... And superpowers. But, like... then there was characters like there's U.S. Agent.
Yeah, U.S. Agent.
Let alone Punisher.
That's true. That it was.
Daredevil's
90s costume.
Yeah.
But like, remember like Omega Red. Like,
that's crazy.
That is true.
That's
like
such a deep cut.
I remember when Rob Liefeld started hitting real popular, and this X-Men series, they started making X-Force.
Yeah.
And that was definitely that wasn't the same level as Spider-Man, Captain America.
Yeah.
And that made it unique. And then when the McFarlane Toys started doing the Spawn figures, that was like a whole. Were you a Spawn collector, or was that like that was after you?
Right? This is Spawn, right? This is Angela.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I could never get into.
You
Spawn.
couldn't get into them.
No, I don't know what it was, and I like McFarlane's style.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just a little too dark and a little too, you know.
Man, I was going back to look at some of those Spawn figures, and they like maybe not the Spawn universe, but like McFarlane did some pretty like weird bondage shit.
Yeah.
And like the thought that they were actually on a toy shelf, like I'm not a prude, but it's just like some of that stuff is like, wow, I can't believe this was like totally acceptable at the time.
Man, it was the Wild West, man.
Yeah.
That's the soundbite for the movie preview about the '90s era of toy collecting.
It was a Wild West.
But the Iron Man, I remember the difference in the Iron Man toy. This is what took it next level. Is the removable helmet.
Absolutely.
Which, by the way, was incredibly ugly and goofy looking.
Yes.
It was not it was like just awkwardly big just to fit around the Tony Stark head.
And he had the mustache. He rocked the mustache. That's how you know.
And seeing him without the helmet was just like a cool image.
It was a cool image. Absolutely. We took journeys to stores. There was the reason why I bought Bucky O'Hare is didn't we have a situation at Children's Palace with Bucky O'Hare?
I thought it was Toys R Us, but the deal was I was always a goody-goody and always felt God's eyes on me from Hebrew school, but I wanted to be a bad boy once, so I wanted to shoplift.
Yeah.
And so I went to a Toys R Us, and it was really just so I could shoplift, and I think I chose a Bucky O'Hare toy. I don't know if it was this toy.
It wasn't. It was a different character.
Yeah.
But it was from that toy line. I think it was like, was it like a big dog guy? I remember too much.
I wish I knew, but you know, it was like we're in the aisle, and I take this off the blister pack off the rack. And I like subtly rip it open, and I like pull the Bucky O'Hare out, and I like stuff it down my pants, and then all of a sudden a woman who I guess must have worked for Toys R Us, but she looked like a customer. It was like a security measure. She was like, "Busted! I just saw one of you guys stealing a toy," and I just out of desperation, on top of my head went, "No, it was actually some other kids, and they went whatever." Can I swear on this show?
Yeah,
bullshit came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I remember just babbling about other kids and how we actually saw them go around the corner. And however I said it, I remember her looking at me and she goes, "Okay, thank you." And then she just took off and we're like, "Get the F out of here." And we go down the aisle and straight for the door. I remember it's the what do you call it?
Automatic.
And I was thinking like in a space when we have like the two chambers. What do you call it? Airlock. Yeah. It's like, and then crossing over, and then I'm walking. It's like I feel the Bucky. Can they see this on camera?
Yeah.
The Bucky hair slipping as I'm walking. I could feel it, and then finally it's like just before the second door opens, slip out and fall, and I just crawled in. So I never technically shoplifted.
You didn't have the glory of
but I felt that I was taught a valuable lesson, and that I was just given a pass, and it was like, there you go. Now I'll never, and I never tried to.
Well, that's good. That was a very memorable story. Man. It's kind of amazing that like I actually like associate so many stories to like action figure collecting.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when you finally gave up, because you don't still collect. I do. I bought your remaining collection.
What year would that have been?
I'm gonna say it was about 95-ish. Like I think that
early.
I think you made it through high school.
Well, okay, here.
Yeah.
Let's define some terms of giving
please.
up. We collected, so I remember having, being kind of, maybe never on exactly the same level as you.
No, but nobody was on the same level.
Certainly remember having the Robin Hood Men and Thieves toys. Robin Hood Men and Thieves. I'm combining the Mel Brooks movie. Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. Action figures like on the cards.
Yes.
Like as decor on my bedroom wall, like nailing those up.
Mm-hmm.
And Dick Tracy's and maybe Beetlejuice's and all those. And probably these. Although I don't remember. I remember wanting these out of the package. Right. They were so cool.
Yeah, I think you did have those out of the package.
And that was when we were on the same level. And then I probably became a little too. You were just like all in.
I was all in.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know what my identity is,
Yeah.
And so I bailed on that, but I was still into having toys around. So while I probably sold you my collection, I remember up until like the 2000s, I still like had the Universal Monster. What were those? Those remember those?
Sideshow ones, maybe?
Maybe they were Sideshow.
Okay, those are a little later.
Simpsons I
right,
had.
you had the Simpsons, which eventually I did buy those off
so there's two times I gave up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then even most recently when you sold me, when you sent me the box of goodies. Like, I think you've always been the type of person that, like, you go into something and then you're done and then you want it out. Whereas, like, I have a harder time. I mean, I do rotate my collection, but ultimately, like, I am all in. Like, you know, but you...
There's two ways to live in life.
Yeah,
you know?
You clean house and...
start a new phase.
Yeah, start a new phase. But yeah, Robin Hood, you brought that up. Like, man, that was like a big collector line. Why? Why was that a collector line? Like, remember, it was a big collector line, but why? Like,
I think because it was kind of were those Kenner?
Yeah, they were Kenner, and they looked like
the original Star Wars.
Yes,
and that would have been what year? 92, 93?
That sounds about right.
Wasn't there, from Kenner's point of view, a certain having watched the documentaries now, a certain desperation to have something after Star Wars, the license or the movies were done?
Yes, but Robin Hood was way after that period of time.
Well, I'm saying from a well, I guess it's about 10 years from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it was because it was like close.
I think
kind of
right.
close. You could do. They could also repurpose.
They did
repurpose like Ewok Village and shit.
Like where Friar Tuck, if you take off his cloth, it's a
Gamorrean
Gamorrean guard.
Yeah. And so there was something, and I remember
the packaging was nice.
And wasn't it also sort of Star Wars-ish?
It was. It had the package had a character photo and nice border.
Yeah.
And also, I think Robin Hood, before we actually saw it, was expected to be a pretty big action adventure, and it was. And I remember liking it too, but I kind of have a feeling I think I would pick up a whole lot if I watched it today.
Yeah.
No, you don't. You remember immediately not liking it?
I remember not. It was just one of those movies in the 90s that just kind of like the filtration system in my mind, where there's the stuff that gets trapped in the filter and it's going to be there which for some reason includes Dick Tracy.
Yeah.
And then there's just the water that passes through, and that's like Robin Hood. Like, I remember thinking it was the thing I remember the most is the Bryan Adams song from it. And being at a roller rink, which was what we would also do at 14 around the same time. This was like our nightlife.
Was that creepy that we were like 14 and going to the roller rink?
I don't think so, because I assumed that there's other 14-year-olds there. I never remember ogling anyone inappropriately aged.
I don't either, but I always feel like maybe we were we went a year longer than we should have.
God, what do you do to try to meet girls?
I don't know. We go to the mall.
Yeah.
Again, children, boys and girls. This is before the internet.
Yeah.
We would go to the mall.
Well, I know. I was going to say those are two. I was going to say two things. So now we could both look for girls at the same place we could buy our toys.
And hit KB. That's right.
Absolutely.
And that actually brings up the fact that, like, I remember you'd have to kind of sneak into KB at that age. Like,
oh, they'd suspect you.
No. I'm saying it's like my own, like, for my own, like,
I see.
My lack of confidence of, hey, I'm just gonna go in and look at the toys. Was waving, and I would sort of, I don't know if I would look around to make sure, but like I certainly remember like lunchtime. If we went to the mall during high school, like I did want to go to KB, and sometimes you would have to just like grin and bear and know that you're not going. You're just going to have to skip that trip. And then sometimes I would just wander off and make sure nobody saw me going into KB.
Oh, man. You know, everyone would be a lot happier, especially when you're younger, if you could just own what you are and what you're into and not have to live in shame.
But don't you think it's better now? Don't you think that people are able to own who they are?
Well, like I said, that's what I'm saying. Nowadays, Marvel movies are the biggest movies in the world. Star Wars, these are all things that are no longer a niche in any way, shape, or form. So unless you're like living in a culture that's so hardcore, into, I don't even know, sports, whatever you would be the antithesis, which I don't even know how to define that anymore.
Me neither.
How could you be, given shit
That's
for
true.
living? Because everybody's going to go see the Marvel movie. They're the biggest movies. Everybody is. So even if you're not collecting the comics or the toys, you're still going to go see the movie,
Right, that's
so where do you draw the line? Oh, you're actually into the toys?
Right.
Boo, nerd.
Right. Plus, like, with the internet, like, the reach is that there's always a niche. There's always a click where you can escape into that. Like, when we were growing up, like, you had to seek those like-minded people. Like, I mean, thankfully, and I think that probably is what drew us more together at that age, is the fact that we both collected comic books and we both read comic books and we could share that. And I remember finding out someone who was popular, you find out that they were sort of into it or something.
That's what I was talking about earlier. Who did you find out? Without naming their names.
Well, without naming names, I can't tell you.
First names only.
No, I can't. I just I remember having like a good conversation with Mike H, and like he got really into like we were talking about X-Men, and his ability, he was really knowledgeable. Like he read the comics, and it blew my mind because I thought maybe he was like, oh yeah, like Wolverine, he's cool, but like after talking to him, he like knew the story arcs, he knew the connections of these characters, and that blew my mind because this was a person who I thought was far cooler than me, and he was really passionate about what we were talking about, and that was incredible. Yeah, it makes you feel good.
I wish we would have. I guess. What am I asking? Did I want to have more friends that were into that, or did it help that we had a diverse group of friends who maybe not everybody was super?
I think it was good that we had a diverse group of friends.
Because then we could have been in a total echo chamber, and who knows?
I mean, ultimately, what probably connected a group of friends as in a high school setting was probably music, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
What? And I imagine that's not as powerful as it was today as it was then, because now there are so many different groups and niches, and like it's more broadcasted.
Yeah, I mean that was when we were also in high school. That was the Eye of the Storm.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah,
for the grunge
boom,
alternative
that's true.
boom, and so that was like that music unified people divided depending on if you thought it was. But once again, like Batmania, we were relatively early adopters. Yes. Relatively. Yes. I know there were people who were way cooler than us, like your older brother.
Yeah, yes. That's right.
That was into that music.
Shout out to Mike, right?
Pixies and Jane's Addiction way before I ever heard of them.
Right.
And so we must have looked annoying to those people. But for most of the other people, we were like, whoa, they're wearing those cool shirts.
Nirvana shirts.
Yeah, exactly. And then I remember it was only however many months or whatever later that the Travises and the football guys were switching their Batman shirts for their Soundgarden or Red Hot Chili Peppers shirts or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, so interesting time. But by the way, this I noticed this because you have a strange cropping of figures that half these I don't know. I don't know what this
James
is.
Bond Jr.
Whoa.
Yeah.
This is actually a fairly decent figure for the 90s.
I liked that was the Total Justice line. That was DC Kenner's like last go at like a DC line, and I liked it. But
and then what is this? G.I. Joe knockoff?
It's a Street Fighter 2 G.I. Joe.
Oh,
and the reason why that's represented is because I think that the G.I. Joe in the 90s was so separate from the way it looked in the 80s. And I was looking for a better representation, but their colors and the characters and the weaponry was so different that it was unique to the 90s.
God, that 90s look was so... There's something where it's the 90s look on things that have a classic look that's awkward. Like, what the classic is, and then you're like, oh, there's like the 90s of... It's like when a musician like goes through their phases.
Right.
Where you're like, I know, I'm used to David Bowie as Ziggy Stardust, and now I'm seeing him in like the 80s, and it just looks a little weird. It works for him, but Mick Jagger, whatever. That's how it is with toys.
The perfect example would be the version for Snake Eyes. It had a little bit... It had the like... cool sleekness of Snake Eyes, but then he had some like orange wristbands and like big the big goggles, and then he had like a little bit of blue on him, and it's like, but the fluorescent orange is what set him apart. It was like they took, I guess they like the simplicity, the coolness of the simplicity, and they gave it that 90s flair, and ultimately I look back at it now with fondness. So I guess that maybe it aged well, or maybe I'm just nostalgic.
I think it's probably the latter.
I think you're right.
Because the Snake Eyes look is...
all black, ninja.
It's funny, there's a couple characters who I've come to realize there's nothing more to them, unless you really say, excuse me, there actually is, if you bother to do the reading. There's nothing more to them than their iconography.
Okay.
Boba Fett is that character is nothing but his iconography. That is a nothing character. The fact that there was going to be a standalone movie, and it was James Mangold, who the guy who did Logan.
And it still might be.
He did a great standalone Logan. But Wolverine has hundreds of pages, thousands of pages of content to mine from to create a character. Boba Fett
looks cool.
It's just a guy who looks cool.
He looks cool.
And now since the movie, sure, maybe there's been books and shit, but...
And do you play Snake Eyes in that category?
That's what I'm saying. Snake Eyes is also I mean, I know that he's got a kind of interesting backstory.
He's got a cool backstory.
But it's ultimately the fact that he looks so badass. That's
true.
It.
That's true.
That's the majority of his appeal.
With that said, I think Snake Eyes, I think they took, and ultimately it was just a cool look, and made something out of it. And I think they successfully made that. With Boba Fett, I don't think that they created anything cool because he's just cool looking.
Yeah.
And that's enough. I think that's enough.
Obviously.
Yes. What other characters would you put in that boat who just like purely look cool? I wouldn't say Wolverine because Wolverine doesn't look cool.
It looks pretty cool. The claws,
so? But the yellow with blue shoulder pads?
Well, it depends on what his, which look.
Okay, but either way, he's wearing a red belt and some underwear.
The claws are one of the coolest things in all of comic books.
I'll give you that.
You're automatically like, that's a cool, unique thing that really isn't replicated very often,
It's like a skull head. Like Ghost Rider. If you've got a skull head of a character, Skeletor, you're automatically cool.
And by the way, how come they haven't been able to do a cool Ghost Rider thing?
I don't know, which is unfortunate because Ghost Rider was cool. I like Danny Ketch Ghost Rider though, which is against the Ghost Rider rules, I think.
What do you mean?
I think Johnny Blaze is Ghost Rider, and again, when I started reading Ghost Rider, it was in the 90s when Danny Ketch took over.
It's so funny, by the way.
I'm holding on to it.
How are there some characters that we accept that there's just multiple people who hold the mantle, and there's others where it's like you don't accept any other Batman except Bruce Wayne. That's it. I know there has been technically, but yet Ant-Man, it's like there's Michael Douglas plays Hank Pym, but then Paul Rudd plays what is his name?
Why?
Scott
Yeah,
Lang.
you know why? Because not enough people give a shit about Ant-Man. Like, who cares about Ant-Man?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that there's probably a handful of people who are like, dude, Ant-Man was my favorite character growing up, and they held tight to Hank Pym. Like, other than that, like, who gives a shit? He's Ant-Man. Like, I respect that they did such an obscure character. Like, I think that just adds layers to the whole universe. But I never cared about Ant-Man.
No, I never knew anything about Ant-Man.
Absolutely not. So I think that's what it is. I think it's like, if you take a character who has such a rich history and have thousands and hundreds of millions of fans, where Batman, Batman posters all over my room, like I lived on Batman. It's kind of hard to make him someone else beside Bruce Wayne because to you Bruce Wayne is Batman. Ant-Man doesn't quite have that. Now
so it's a certain tier, and then up here. But although Green Lantern is sort of at a weird level.
Green Lantern is a weird
because I guess because technically you can coexist with the different incarnations.
Because you can have Jon Stewart, you can have Hal Jordan and Alan Scott, Kyle Rayner.
Is Alan Scott the original one?
Alan Scott was the original. Hal Jordan, I still say is the best. That was Showcase 22. Jon Stewart was cool, but I think he was 90s JLU. That's who they used. And then the Kyle Ratner, I didn't like him.
I didn't even make sense. At least John Stewart, you go, okay, it's an African-American Green Lantern. That's cool. Guy Gardner's sort of a
Guy Gardner. He was a douchey Green Lantern.
With the bulk up, but what is Kyle Ratner's just another white guy?
I'm
sure once again, people who know more than me would go, the difference in him and Hal Jordan was this. But I'm from an iconograph point of view, I'm just he's just looked at me like cool, younger.
Hipper. That's what I think it was. Younger, hipper. Green Lantern.
Can I talk about, because I'm going to tie together a few threads. So Gambit, first of all, is a character I think, although someone argue this is not cool and iconographic.
I thought he looked cool, man.
I think he looks cool. The trench coat, the bow, the playing cards, the weird...
The pink spandex?
The pink spandex, the thing on his head, and also in the comics, they don't have it here. I remember always loving his
stubble.
Yeah. And I remember at 14 being like, I just want that Gambit stubble. I just want that, because that's what a real man who can get ladies like this.
Yes.
Rogue.
Oh man, I loved that relationship.
And his flirtation with Rogue and all that.
His accent.
And once again, a character that has never really had its due in the media. Yes. There's a big talk of a movie with Channing Tatum. And I hope.
By the way, Channing Tatum. When I think of Gambit, I don't think of that actor. I'm not saying that wouldn't work. I'm just saying I don't think of him as that.
I don't know who you get to play Gambit. And once again, Gambit isn't.
I think of more of a Ryan Gosling, a little thinner, taller frame. Does that make sense? I'm not saying Ryan. Yeah. That's just what I think. Channing Tatum is a big hulking, he's more thicker dude. Where I always think of Gambit as being more slender. And, that's my thought.
Well, it's interesting because with Ryan Reynolds and and Deadpool, there really is nobody better to play Deadpool. Like, he's perfect for that character,
yeah, it
right?
seems that way.
On every level, his build, his
humor,
persona, his humor.
I get it.
But Gambit, I don't know if the character is well known enough to really go like, who's the perfect.
Yeah,
Gambit,
I guess that's fair enough.
Like, I don't know. I don't know enough about. Like I said, that's why Gambit's in that gray area. It's not saying he's all the way Boba Fett.
No,
but he also doesn't have, a Batman, a Dark Knight Returns level story that you can go the quintessential Gambit story. Like
plus
to draw from.
His superpowers was throwing playing cards.
Yeah,
wasn't the coolest. Power.
Yeah.
But I really did embrace his relationship with Rogue in the comic.
And if there's a movie, I think that's what the movie has to focus on.
Yes, I do too.
Because it's that was sort of what I always think about when I think about Gambit. When I read a little bit about him, I guess he was another thing that's kind of cool is that he was like an Oliver Twist, where he's like kind of a street or urchin orphan that was sort of adopted by like a criminal and manipulated to use his powers for. So that's
interesting. Yeah.
We'll see.
That figure though is pretty iconic. Like for toy collecting, it was
dude.
This garbage bag was awful, and I remember like hating it. But sometimes I was an apologist. I would sort of defend something like that, and then depending on your figure, like some of the feet, the leg, the kicking action wouldn't stay down, so you could never stand them. I don't remember if my version was good or not though.
Your first version.
My first version.
One.
Oh yeah, this is this is later.
One of 50 that you have.
One more character before we wrap up. Archangel. Like they made him look cool.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that he didn't have
same color palette.
Yeah, that was a 90s.
Yeah.
Completely same color palette. But Archangel's one of those characters where I don't really remember a whole lot about his story. I know Apocalypse had something to do with his costume or whatever, but I've already, like, Toy Biz Marvel Legends, like, they're doing a new Archangel figure, pre-ordered it immediately.
Yeah.
Just because it looks cool.
Yeah.
Big metal wings.
And this is what I was going to say earlier, although it is a little more complicated. I was going to say, what I said earlier with the Snake Eyes in the 90s, and it's just weird because when you have an image of a character that was from a different era that's been upgraded to the current era, it's always weird, but Archangel's very much, even though it is Angel, which is a character from the 60s, Archangel is a 90s character, so you look at the blue, the teal, and the pink, and the silver wings or whatever, and it works. It all comes together. Side note, real quick, so there's a character in Rick and Morty called Bird Person, as you know, and when at the end of the first episode of season 3, I wrote that button when it's revealed that he's been upgraded to Phoenix Person, that was, I remember telling the artist, like Angel to Archangel,
and I think that translates really well.
I want that like idea that this was like one character that's now been upgraded to like a cooler version, and also like cooler and like and the way that once again these characters aren't just cool because of their story; they're like designed to appeal aesthetically.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that works well. But real quick, Bird Person was my favorite character because. He looked like, I want to say, Falcon from Buck Rogers, and I think that was intentional.
That was the
inspiration.
That was the original.
And for some reason, as a really young kid, I remember having like just moments in my memory of Bird Person, like or I'm sorry, Falcon or whatever his name was, and it really didn't like. When I see pictures of it, I connect to it, but it's not like I necessarily remember watching Buck Rogers. I just remember that image. Yeah. So it's an important image to me.
Yeah, I never knew that character until it was brought up in the writer's room, man.
So, I hope you enjoyed this little long journey. Did you?
Is this longer than usual?
Yeah, I mean, we can do a part 2. Yeah, that's true.
That's up to you. You edit this stuff.
Yeah, that's true. We can just keep going. We can keep going and just break it up.
Oh, you mean keep talking?
Oh yeah, no. Let's wrap this one up. We can.
I don't care.
I hope you enjoyed it, Ryan. Thank you for going down memory lane.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah,
it's always good to know your roots, your history.
So on final note, like as during that time, what is your favorite action figure?